There were three things I noticed that morning before the coffee even brewed: the scent of sandalwood cologne in our master bathroom, the passenger seat of her car adjusted for someone much taller than her 5'5", and the pair of Louis Vuitton heels, mine, kicked under the living room chair like they were ashamed to be involved. Funny how marriage slowly teaches you to catalog absurdities like a war historian, except the war is silent, and the casualties are subtle: your trust, your dignity, your pension. I laughed when I saw the heels. Angela had bought them for herself last Christmas but never wore them, claiming they pinched her toes. Suddenly, now, they were broken in. That morning, I found the receipt, $842.50, billed to our joint credit card, for a romantic coastal escape package at a luxury in about 3 hours upstate. Booked for 2. Check-in was last Friday, check-out Sunday, while I was at my mother's, helping her set up a new oxygen machine and changing out old medicine labels like a good son, a role Angela always found quaint. She was supposed to be home all weekend, too swamped to come with me. Remember? Deadlines, she said. Her boss, that nebbish man with unfortunate sideburns, apparently had her running reports on a Saturday. And yet there it was, itemized, bold, and sitting right in the middle of our Chase app like a confession scribbled in Helvetica. But I didn't say a word. I didn't breathe funny. I just transferred a little more cash out of the joint account into the trust fund I'd set up 3 months prior, Martin's contingency reserve, as I jokingly called it on the paperwork. Just a safety net, I told the banker, in case things ever got unpredictable. Angela came home later that day looking tired, but glowing in that smug way of hers, like she'd figured out how to cheat the world at its own game and couldn't wait to see how long she could keep the streak going. She dropped her overnight bag at the door and immediately launched into a tirade about how brutal the weekend had been. I didn't even sleep, Marty, she said, using that sing-song, condescending nickname she adopted when she wanted me to feel small. My eyes are burning from spreadsheets. You don't even want to know. And I didn't. I genuinely didn't. I just smiled, handed her a glass of her favorite overpriced organic kombucha, and asked if she wanted to talk about it. She didn't. Of course not. She changed the subject within 10 seconds, asking me if I'd remembered to pay the landscaping bill. I told her yes, and I had, using funds from my personal account this time. She seemed pleased by my compliance, unaware she was being gently rotated on a mental spit, roasted in low heat. But the real punchline came the next morning. She left for work early, 6:30 sharp, claiming she had a meeting with procurement, and I, as usual, did my morning sweep of the kitchen. It was a habit developed not out of control but pattern recognition. There, next to the espresso machine, was her travel mug, the same one she never leaves without. And beside it, her company-issued laptop. Angela, the woman who once screamed at me for accidentally disconnecting her Wi-Fi while she was sending a client invoice, had walked out of the house without either of her precious lifelines. Strange, right? Unless, of course, she wasn't going to work. Unless she was heading somewhere else entirely. It's amazing how much you can learn about a person by what they forget when they think they're in control. So I sat down at the counter and began logging into our bank accounts. Not to confront her. No, that would be juvenile. Instead, I began making quiet changes. Password updates. Auto transfers. I scheduled a routine audit meeting with our financial advisor and requested Angela be removed from immediate access until the review was complete. Just standard procedural stuff, nothing illegal, nothing permanent. Just a recalibration of risk exposure. Later, I boxed up her forgotten laptop and travel mug and placed them gently on the foyer table, right next to a note that said, "You left your tools behind." No accusations. No panic. Just information like any good accountant provides. She thinks I'm oblivious, slow, docile even. Let her keep thinking that. After all, it's easier to destroy a person's game when they don't realize they're already playing yours. They say the worst kind of silence is the one that smiles at you, and that's exactly what Angela became. A walking silence wrapped in perfectly curated smiles, each one colder than the last. Our life, at least from the outside, was the kind of middle-aged dream you'd see in retirement fund commercials, a modest 2-story in a decent neighborhood, matching his and hers SUVs, and a Sunday morning routine that involved bagels, newspapers, and polite conversations about things like weather patterns and office gossip. We even had a little herb garden she started during lockdown: basil, thyme, rosemary, though by now it had gone wild, like everything else she claimed to be nurturing. In the early months, I genuinely believed we were solid. She'd come home from work late sometimes, Yes, but she'd still curl up on the couch beside me, feet tucked under a blanket, and smile when I rubbed her calves. She laughed at my dry jokes about her coworkers and still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, though now it was always on the cheek, never the lips. I chalked that up to stress, menopause maybe, or some hormonal realignment I wasn't supposed to understand. But then the subtle edits to our life began. First, it was the gym. She signed up for a boutique fitness studio that cost more than our cable bill, claiming she needed something just for herself. Then it was her wardrobe, new yoga sets, sleek little handbags I'd never seen before, and a sudden obsession with skincare routines that sounded more like chemistry labs. She insisted she was investing in herself, and I smiled, nodded, even encouraged it. I wanted her to be happy. That's what love is, isn't it? Hoping they become more of who they are, even if it means you get a little less of them. But soon, her schedule grew cluttered with vague commitments, girls' nights with names I didn't recognize, wellness seminars that ran late into the evening, impromptu coffee meetings with clients on weekends. The times she used to spend curled on the couch became sacred moments of solitude in her new home office. The door remained closed now, even though she said she hated working from home. And when I knocked once, just to bring her a snack, she opened the door with the kind of tight-lipped expression that made me feel like I'd barged into a therapy session I wasn't invited to. She started using new language, two phrases she never would have strung together a year ago. "I'm focusing on my emotional boundaries," she said one evening when I asked why we hadn't had dinner together in over a week. "I just need space to think, Martin. It's not personal. But that's the thing about space, it has weight. And this space between us was growing heavier by the day." She started reading self-help books with bright pastel covers, all with titles like Becoming Your Own Son and The Power of Me. I found one open on the kitchen counter once, face down, under a post-it note that read, "Protect your energy." I didn't ask. I didn't want to start a war over semantics. So instead, I made peace with it, or tried to. I started washing my own clothes again, cooking my own meals. It became easier to not ask questions. Still, the details began stacking. Her social media accounts, once filled with photos of us at restaurants or out in the yard, suddenly went dark, private, then locked. When I asked about it, she smiled and said she was limiting her digital footprint. A noble thing, sure, but odd, considering she posted about her morning smoothies just 2 weeks prior. Then came the financial ripples. Small things at first, charges from boutiques she never mentioned, dinners at places she never invited me to, and a mysterious $600 wellness retreat deposit charged on a Tuesday. I double-checked our calendar. She'd told me she had board meetings all that week. Still, I said nothing. What was I going to do? Accuse her of improving herself too efficiently? But the worst, the one that stayed with me like a migraine behind the eyes, was the scent of a different life clinging to her when she came home late. Not perfume that I would have recognized, but a mixture of aftershave, pine soap, and some chemical tang that smelled like hotel carpet. I never mentioned it. I just held her when she let me, which became less and less frequent. Her hugs turned into tap-and-release maneuvers, like she was trying not to wrinkle her aura. She started sleeping with a body pillow between us, citing back pain. Once, I woke up to find her already dressed at 4:30 in the morning, hair done, keys in hand. "Just couldn't sleep," she whispered, like it made perfect sense. "Might as well get to work early." I said okay. That's all I said. I suppose that's the moment I realized she wasn't trying to grow, she was trying to mold. Shed the past. Shed me. Her smile hadn't vanished. It had just stopped pointing in my direction. And yet I waited. I watched. I continued to file away these moments, one by one, like puzzle pieces from a box she didn't know I was holding. Because sometimes love means giving them rope. And sometimes it means watching them hang their own illusions with it. It was a Tuesday, always the boring days that break you, and I was upstairs folding laundry when her tablet, the one she always left charging on the kitchen counter, lit up with a notification I wasn't meant to see. I'd only gone down to grab a fresh shirt from the dryer when the screen pulsed once, blue and innocent, displaying a preview from an app one didn't recognize, a messaging platform called Lyra. The name meant nothing to me, but the message said everything. "Miss you already. That thing you did in the car, your evil winking face." It wasn't just the content. It was the timestamp. 32 minutes ago, Angela was supposed to be at her mentorship brunch, some new initiative she claimed to be running for young women in her field. She'd even asked me to help edit the announcement email last week. And here she was, apparently redefining mentorship one back seat at a time. I stared at the screen. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just watched as the message preview disappeared, swallowed by the lock screen's ambient glow. Then the tablet dimmed again, like nothing had happened. Like it hadn't just detonated something inside me. I didn't touch it. Didn't open the message. That would have been impulsive, emotional, messy. Instead, I walked to the fridge, poured myself a glass of cold water, and sat down at the dining table with a legal pad. I began listing every lie she'd told in the last 90 days. Times, locations, alibis. I marked the date of the spa retreat she booked with Maya from work and cross-referenced it with her card activity. Room service for two, champagne, a $78 surcharge for late checkout. That had annoyed me at the time, not because of the money, but because she claimed she had to rush back for a presentation. Now I knew. There was no Maya. There was no presentation. Just friction-burned leather seats and whatever lipstick-laced fantasy she'd been nurturing behind my back. I thought of all the quiet nights I'd cooked dinner while she texted under the table, smiling at her lap like it told better jokes than I ever did. I thought of the kombucha I bought her every damn week, not knowing she was cleansing toxins during the day and collecting new ones at night. The house was dead silent. All I could hear was the tick of the wall clock and the low hum of the HVAC system, cycling air into a space that no longer felt like mine. But I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My hands didn't shake. That part of me was gone, already replaced by something colder. Her phone was still gone with her, but I had passwords. Angela wasn't as clever as she thought she was. She used variations of the same phrase for everything. Enlighten me, 21. I tried it on the Lyra app through the tablet browser. Denied. Then I tried Enlighten me 2021, which worked. A confirmation email hit her inbox, and just like that, I had access. The message history unfolded like a tumor biopsy. Graphic compliments, inside jokes, photos I recognized only because I'd taken them, the angles, the outfits, sent to someone else with captions like, "Wish you were here instead." There were no names in the thread, just initials, C. The tone wasn't teenage, but it wasn't adult either. It was something more dangerous, the kind of tone people use when they believe the rules no longer apply to them. One message in particular froze me. "Don't worry, he still thinks I'm going to yoga twice a week. It's honestly too easy." That was dated 3 Thursdays ago, the night she came home wearing my hoodie and told me she loved me for always giving her space. I remember I kissed her forehead. She laughed and said, "You're such a rare man." And I believed it. God help me, I believed it. From that moment on, something in me broke, not loudly, but with surgical precision, like cutting the last tether on a hot air balloon. I was no longer a husband. I was no longer a man trying to hold on to something sacred. I was a man documenting a crime scene that was still actively unfolding. I deleted my trail from the app, closed the tablet, and returned everything exactly as I found it. Then I sat back down at the kitchen table and stared at the blank legal pad. One line now sat at the top. Operation Hollow Marriage. Below it, bullet points, asset freeze mechanisms, legal trust loopholes, offshore account timelines. The house was silent, but I wasn't alone anymore. Not really. I had clarity now, a new kind of companion. The kind that doesn't care how you feel, only what you do next. She walked back in around 4 p.m., smiling, flushed, a little too dewy for a brunch. "Hey babe," she said, dropping her bag and kissing me on the head like I was her loyal dog. "How was your day?" I looked up from the legal pad and smiled. "Productive," I said. "Very productive." Angela always fancied herself the clever one in the marriage, the strategist, the planner, the intuitive soul who could read people 3 steps ahead. But what she never figured out was that while she played checkers with emotions, I'd spent 3 decades quietly mastering the game of forensic logic. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to pry her phone from her hand or follow her down dark alleys like some jealous soap opera husband. No, I needed only one thing, a pattern. And Angela, for all her so-called spontaneity, was a creature of obsessive routine disguised as chaos. She loved the performance of unpredictability, but underneath, she was as methodical as tax code. So I began with the most boring weapon in my arsenal, spreadsheets. I downloaded every bank and credit card statement we'd shared in the past year. I color-coded her charges, green for normal, yellow for plausibly normal, and red for who the hell spends $314 at a gas station at 11:45 p.m.? It took me 3 nights, but I found what I was looking for. Recurring transactions to a boutique hotel on the edge of the industrial district, a location she would never go willingly unless seduction came with free parking. She'd been there 5 times in the last 2 months, all on days she claimed to have mentor retreats or emergency team debriefs. Still, I needed confirmation, something undeniable. So I waited until the next time she announced a networking brunch and offered to drop her off on my way to the dry cleaners. She hesitated, briefly, said she might be late. I smiled and told her that was fine. I'd leave her the car and take an Uber. The next morning, she left early, claiming she needed prep time. But I already had a plan in motion. 2 days before, I'd mailed a fake brand collaboration gift basket to her workplace, timed to arrive at 11 a.m. sharp. A dozen gluten-free protein bars, a yoga mat, and a handwritten card from a fake wellness brand I registered for $15 online. Inside the card, "Thank you, Angela, for your continued leadership in the women's mentorship circle. Looking forward to your social posts this weekend." I tracked the package. Delivered and signed for at reception at exactly 11:02 a.m. I waited until 2 p.m. and texted her, "Did you get the gift?" Pretty thoughtful, right? Her reply, "What gift?" That was enough for me. She hadn't been at the office. She hadn't even thought to cover the lie. She was too confident. From there, I moved to more advanced tactics. I used one of her burner email addresses, the one she didn't know I'd found in the autofill history of our shared laptop, to log into an event planning app she'd signed up for under her personal growth persona. And there, under an alias, I found a list of private bookings she'd RSVP'd to meditation retreats, coaching circles, even a tantric workshop that made my stomach turn. But most damning of all was a recurring event titled C plus a monthly reconnection, always booked during work hours, always with an address that matched the boutique hotel. No full names, of course, just initials. But I didn't need names. I had data. I began planting conversational tripwires. "How was the Thai food yesterday?" I'd ask, knowing she had no Thai lunch, but her card had been used at a downtown place known for private booths. She'd fumble slightly, then say something like, "Oh, right. I didn't tell you. We ended up there last minute after our regular spot was full." Each lie added a layer to the mask she was sewing over her real face, and I took notes. Not literal notes, not anymore. That was traceable. I committed it all to memory, honed from years of tax audits and client interviews. I also began casually asking about her best friend Maya, the one she always claimed to be with. Maya, conveniently, had just gotten a new job and had gone off-grid with her phone. Curious, I reached out through an old email chain about our anniversary trip to Napa and got an auto-response saying Maya was traveling abroad on sabbatical for the next 4 months. So either Angela was talking to a very committed ghost, or someone else had been playing the role of Maya during her afternoon escapes. I even messaged one of Angela's junior coworkers from a fake client account, just to see if she really had a mentorship circle. The woman responded politely but confused, saying Angela hadn't led any such initiative this year. "She's been focused on personal projects," was the exact phrase. The only personal project she was building, it seemed, was the slow-motion collapse of our marriage behind a curtain of incense, cryptic books, and someone else's hands on her thighs. By now, I collected enough intel to ruin her socially, emotionally, and financially. But that wasn't the goal, not yet. Not until I knew how deep it went. I needed to understand the rules of her new game, the full scope of the theater she'd built to convince herself that betrayal was growth. So I kept smiling. I made her tea when she got home. I nodded when she shared fake anecdotes from imaginary meetings. I even massaged her shoulders one night while she texted her lover in front of me, laughing at her screen like a teenager. She thought she was playing 2 men against each other, but what she didn't know was that the other one hadn't even shown up to the game. And I was already playing both sides of the board. It was the annual partners gala for Angela's firm, a glitzy, overwrought affair held in the rooftop ballroom of a downtown hotel, full of glass walls and curated hors d'oeuvres. The kind of place where people pretend their marriages aren't dying while sipping elderflower cocktails. Angela insisted I come with her, as if tradition still had weight, as if dragging me into a room filled with sycophants and sterile laughter might cover the sin of betrayal leaking off her in waves. She looked radiant, of course, new dress, fresh highlights, eyes sharp with the adrenaline of being desired by people who didn't know her secrets. I played my role perfectly, doting husband, patient smile, well-timed laughter. I even held her hand as we made the rounds. But at 9:32 p.m., I excused myself, went to the concierge desk in the lobby, and confirmed the delivery I'd arranged earlier that day. 1 manila envelope. Inside, a printed screenshot, not a digital copy of the security camera footage from the same hotel, 6 floors below, taken the previous Wednesday at 3:46 p.m. It showed Angela exiting the building, arm in arm with a tall man in business casual, her mouth on his neck, my wedding ring swinging from a chain around her fingers like a souvenir. I tucked the envelope under my arm, rode the elevator back up, and waited for the right moment. It came 20 minutes later, when she was introducing me to some executive from Atlanta, and I casually handed her the envelope like it was a dinner bill. "What's this?" she asked, already unnerved by the calmness in my eyes. "Just a highlight reel," I said, and then turned to the executive. "Excuse us a moment, would you?" Angela's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The color drained from her face in slow degrees, like water leaking from a cracked vase. Her first words were almost mechanical. "It's not what you think." I said nothing. I just looked at her, patient as gravity. She swallowed hard, eyes darting around the room like she might find a loophole in someone else's face. "We were just talking. You always jump to conclusions, Martin." I raised one eyebrow slowly. Her voice sharpened. "Fine. Yes, it was a moment. A mistake. I was emotional. He was there. You've been so distant lately, I felt, neglected." There it was, the pivot, the reach for justification. I took a slow sip of champagne and said, "You felt neglected in the house I paid for, wearing the clothes I bought, driving the car I maintain, while I handle bills you didn't know existed?" Her lip twitched. She tried to regain footing. "You never see me. I needed to feel alive again. I needed permission to implode your own dignity." I asked, still cool. "Because that's what this is, Angela. You set fire to a quiet life because you were bored." She straightened her spine, mask reforming, reaching for the last phase mockery. "You've always been so small, Martin. So passive. You think knowing makes you powerful? What now? You gonna cry? Run home and draft a spreadsheet about your broken heart." The cruelty was meant to cut. Instead, it confirmed everything I already knew. She didn't regret the betrayal, only the exposure. I took a deep breath and said, "You've been performing for so long. I think you actually believe the lines you're reciting. That's what's sad. Not the affair. Not even the lies. What's sad is that you thought you were untouchable. That I was just some footnote in your personal reinvention story." The air between us thickened, each breath a negotiation. Her laugh came too fast, brittle and loud. "What? You think you've won now? You're still boring. Still predictable. Nothing's changed." "Everything's changed," I said quietly. "Because now, you're the only one in the room who doesn't know the story's already been rewritten without you in it." That's when the fear finally crept in, subtle, but unmistakable. Her eyes scanned my face for clues, like trying to decode a language she hadn't studied. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She just didn't know how deep the knife had gone. Not yet. And that was the best part. The silence between us wasn't just tension, it was architecture. A cathedral of impending consequences. I didn't move. Neither did she. We stood in the glittering chaos of that ballroom, still smiling for anyone who looked our way, as the music played on and her perfect life began to rot from the inside out. She followed me home that night, not because she wanted reconciliation, but because she needed an audience, and for the first time in years, she no longer had one. I didn't speak in the car, didn't look at her, just unlocked the door and walked inside, lights off, coat still on, as she stood in the foyer clutching her purse like it might anchor her to something that hadn't already been lost. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, the unraveling began. "So that's it," she hissed, already bracing for a fight she'd rehearsed in her head 100 different ways. "You find one stupid video and suddenly you're the victim?" I said nothing, just moved past her, pouring myself a glass of water like she wasn't there. "You don't even want to understand what was happening for me, do you?" she said, stepping into the kitchen, voice rising like steam. "I was drowning, Martin. Every day with you felt like suffocating in beige. No passion, no purpose, just routine, and your quiet little rituals that made me feel like a ghost in my own life." Still, I didn't look at her. She waited for a reaction, and when none came, she escalated. "You smothered me," she snapped. "You treated me like a roommate with benefits. This is just as much your fault as it is mine." You pushed me into his arms. I took a slow sip, then looked her dead in the eye. "You climbed in willingly." That stopped her, not long, just a flicker, but long enough for the facade to crack. "You think you're above all this, don't you? Just because you stayed quiet? You think being calm makes you better?" She sneered, stepping closer. "You're not better, Martin. You're pathetic. You're a coward. Real men fight for their wives. Real men don't hide behind spreadsheets in silence." I set the glass down gently, not flinching. Real men don't have to beg their wives not to spread their legs for strangers. The slap never came, but I saw it flash across her face, the urge, the rage, the impotence. Instead, she recoiled like the words had peeled something off her skin. "You were always so cold," she said, voice quivering now, desperation slipping in. "I tried to make it work. I really did. But you made me feel invisible. I needed more." "You needed novelty," I replied. "And now you're allergic to consequence." She began to pace, arms crossed, pacing a hole into the hardwood. "You don't get it. I gave up so much for this life. I compromised. I let go of dreams so you could keep your little accountant kingdom running smoothly." I tilted my head. "You let go of accountability, not dreams." "I'm human," she shouted. "I made a mistake." "You made a series," I corrected, voice still flat. "You held rehearsals." Her breath hitched. She didn't expect that one. She was trying every trick now, guilt, blame, deflection, but none of it landed. Because I wasn't trying to win an argument. I wasn't even in the argument. I'd left it days ago. Now I was just observing the autopsy of a performance that had run far too long. "Why won't you yell?" she demanded suddenly, spinning toward me. "Why won't you scream at me? Say something real. What would be the point?" I said. "You only hear what flatters your narrative." That broke something in her, not loudly, but visibly. The posture changed. The fire turned to flicker. "I loved you," she whispered, too soft now. "You were my person, Martin." "No," I replied. "I was your insurance policy." The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was collapse. She looked around the kitchen like it had become unfamiliar, like the walls had shifted without her noticing. Her lip trembled, and for a second, I thought the tears might come. But they didn't. Because Angela didn't cry unless there was someone to catch the fallout. And now she was starting to understand. I wouldn't be that person anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was done. And in that moment, she saw it, really saw it. The power she'd always held by dangling emotion over me was gone. The man in front of her didn't need closure, didn't need revenge, didn't need her. He was already somewhere else, mentally gone, body just waiting for the lease to expire. She stood there, breathing shallow, trying to summon one last line, one final trick to pull me back into orbit. But there was nothing left. I picked up my glass, took the last sip, and walked past her without a glance. She didn't follow. And that silence, that terrified her more than any shouting ever could. The morning after her unraveling, I woke early, not from anxiety, but from clarity. It was the first time in months that my mind felt sharp, like a blade honed in silence. She was still asleep, sprawled across the guest bed like someone who believed the storm had passed, not realizing the real weather hadn't even started yet. I brewed coffee without making a sound, took my notepad, and reviewed the blueprint I'd already sketched in my head over the past 3 weeks. Revenge wasn't about making her cry. It wasn't about shouting, "I told you so." It was about stripping away the scaffolding she used to prop up her fake little kingdom. I began with the financials, the most vulnerable nerve. Over the past year, I'd quietly opened a private account in a different bank, slowly transferring my portion of savings and discretionary funds, all disguised as routine expenses and investment rollovers. The joint accounts? Those were restructured overnight. I pulled 80% into a holding company registered under my name, a passive investment entity she didn't know existed. I left just enough to keep her from noticing until she tried to use it. Her credit cards? Canceled. Not through confrontation, but via simple reporting. Potential fraud? I told the customer service rep, "Please reissue mine only." They complied within minutes. Next came the house. I owned it outright, a gift from my father, documented in premarital assets, but we lived in it long enough that she believed it was a shared accomplishment. I contacted my lawyer, triggered a silent occupancy clause, and served a formal separation notice via courier the next day. She'd have 30 days to vacate. No discussion. No negotiation. While she slept, I also transferred ownership of the second car, the one she used, to a trust that listed me as the sole beneficiary. Later that afternoon, I called the dealership and reported it as reassigned. The tow company arrived 2 days later, mid-morning, while she was on a fake phone call with her therapist. Watching her stand in the driveway barefoot, screaming at the guy in a reflective vest, was almost poetic. I didn't watch from the window. I didn't need to. I already knew the expression she'd be wearing. It wasn't rage, it was confusion dressed up as injustice. But that was just the opening act. I had more elegant knives to throw. I printed out every email, every chat log, every hotel receipt from her burner accounts and organized them into a binder, not messy screenshots, but neatly formatted evidence, complete with dates, cross-reference statements, and highlighted contradictions. I made 2 copies. One went to my lawyer. The other went to her employer's HR department, enclosed in a sealed manila envelope, labeled Confidential, Employee Conduct Review. No threats, no theatrics. Just evidence. I didn't ask for her to be fired. I simply presented facts that made keeping her on staff a liability. 3 days later, she got the call. Administrative leave pending internal review. She told me it was a misunderstanding, that someone had sabotaged her, that I wouldn't understand what it's like to be targeted for being strong. I just nodded. You're right, I said. I wouldn't understand. Then I called her parents, not out of spite, but out of obligation. They'd always been good to me. Her mother answered, her voice cheerful until she heard mine. I think you should hear from me first, I said. Then I calmly told her what had happened, not the emotional bits, not the betrayal, just the facts, the affairs, the deception, the fallout. She didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She just whispered, "Oh my God," and promised to speak with Angela. I didn't stop her. I wanted Angela to face someone she couldn't manipulate with eyeliner and victimhood. Then I turned to the social layer. Mutual friends. Colleagues. I never said a word in anger. I simply sent a polite message. Just so you're aware, Angela and I have separated. There are some things I've learned recently that you'll probably hear about from her. If you want to know the facts, let me know. I'm happy to share. The silence that followed wasn't absence, it was alignment. People chose their sides. And most of them chose mine, quietly, without announcement, the way good people do when faced with truth that cannot be spun. I even contacted her best friend, Maya, the real one, the one traveling abroad, and forwarded her a copy of Angela's alibi messages using Maya's name. Her reply came 6 hours later. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. She told me you were going through a depression. I thanked her for her honesty. And then I called the hotel, the one they used, and requested their guest records for the days in question. I used the alias I found in her email. They confirmed occupancy. And just like that, the final proof slotted into place. By the time Angela realized something was wrong, her life was already collapsing in quiet, irreversible stages. She accused me of hacking her. I hadn't. She accused me of sabotaging her career. I hadn't. She said I was trying to erase her. No, Angela. I was simply removing the parts you forged. The woman who once smirked behind lies was now pacing rooms she no longer owned, dialing phones that no longer answered, sleeping in a house that echoed back nothing. And I hadn't even raised my voice. It happened on a Sunday, a family lunch at her parents' house, something she insisted on keeping despite everything unraveling beneath her feet. She wanted the illusion, one last chance to control the narrative, to pose in front of the people who raised her and pretend she was still the composed, brilliant woman they admired. She didn't know I'd already spoken to them. She didn't know her mother had called me in tears 2 nights earlier, or that her father had requested to see the full truth after finding one of Angela's burner texts open on the family computer during her last visit. I obliged. I sent them everything, not in anger, but in organized, time-stamped order. No commentary, no editorializing. Just the plain, ugly reality. A daughter they thought they knew, contorting her marriage into a stage for selfishness and deceit. Still, she wore her best cream blazer and her old diamond studs, like dignity could be summoned by fashion. She walked into their kitchen with her head high, greeting everyone with forced brightness, even offering to carve the roast. I stayed close but silent. She kept glancing at me like she was waiting for a signal, a cue to resume whatever script she thought we were both still pretending to read. But it never came. Halfway through the meal, her father set his fork down, wiped his mouth with a cloth napkin, and looked her dead in the eyes. "Angela," he said, flat and heavy. "Do you have anything to say to your husband?" The silence that followed was so pure it made the clock ticking above the fridge sound like artillery fire. Her smile faltered. Just a tremor, but enough to draw blood from the illusion. "About what?" she asked, too quickly, eyes darting. Her mother sighed, low and tired, and pushed an envelope toward her across the table. I recognized it immediately, my summary binder. She froze. "What is this?" she asked, though she knew. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, flipping through the pages like maybe, if she moved fast enough, the truth wouldn't stick. Her eyes skimmed emails, texts, location logs. When she hit the printout of her hotel reservation, she let out a sound that wasn't quite a gasp, more like a punctured breath. You gave this to them? She hissed, looking at me like I'd violated some ancient trust. You dragged my parents into this. I didn't answer. Her father did. No, Angela. You dragged us all into this. We just opened our eyes. She stood suddenly, clutching the envelope, voice climbing in pitch. You're seriously going to believe his little detective act over me? You don't know what our marriage has been like. You don't know what he's like behind closed doors. But her mother just shook her head. We believed everything you told us, Angela. And it was all fiction. Angela laughed, brittle, high-pitched, wrong. Oh, come on. Are we really doing this? Are we pretending he's some innocent monk? That I just woke up one day and decided to self-destruct? No one answered. Her sister looked away. Her brother-in-law sipped water like it might wash away the discomfort. She turned to me then, eyes narrowing. Say something, she snapped. Tell them how cold you were. How dead our marriage was. Don't just sit there like some smug accountant. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said quietly, this is you. Unedited. That's when it happened. The final break. Her face twisted, rage contorting her features like a mask melting in the sun. You loved how obedient I was, didn't you? She shouted. You loved how predictable I made your life. You didn't care who I really was. You just wanted a background character. Her father stood. Enough. But she wasn't finished. She spun toward her mother. And you? You always compared me to Emily. Why can't you be more grounded? Well, congratulations, Mom. She's grounded. And I'm the failure. Happy. Her voice cracked mid-sentence, and for the first time that afternoon, the tears came. Not graceful ones. The ugly kind. Gasping, contorted, mascara-streaked. She dropped into the nearest chair like her bones gave out, clutching her face with both hands, as if she could hide from the weight of her own collapse. No one moved. No one comforted her. And I stayed exactly where I was, hands folded, gaze steady. She looked up at me through red eyes, desperate, broken. But there was nothing left to salvage. She saw it in my face. Not hate, not fury, just absence. I was no longer her husband. I was the man who survived her. The man who stood through the storm, dry and unmoved, while she drowned in a flood of her own making. And that was what broke her. Not the evidence, not the judgment, but the realization that I wasn't fighting her anymore, because I didn't care to. I just watched. And in that watching, she finally saw the full cost of everything she'd done. It happened at the worst possible place for her. The farewell party for a retiring senior partner at her firm, a polished rooftop affair filled with glass flutes, pressed suits, and overly ambitious junior associates pretending to care about speeches. I hadn't planned to go, but she invited me weeks ago, back when she still thought there was some version of us worth parading. I showed up 20 minutes after she did, wearing the same dark suit she used to say made me look like a surgeon, not flashy, just controlled. She was laughing with a small group near the open bar, champagne in hand, when I walked in. She saw me, eyes wide for just a moment before snapping back into performance mode. Martin, she called, voice syrupy. You made it. Her tone was tight. I smiled, nodded at the group, then turned to the man beside her, early 40s, tall, hair just disheveled enough to look curated. You must be C, I said calmly. His face twitched. Excuse me. No need, I said. I recognize your shoes. Same ones from the security footage. Also from the Instagram story you didn't realize tagged the hotel's location 2 weeks ago. A hush dropped over the group. One woman backed away slightly. Angela's mouth opened, then closed. You're not doing this here, she hissed. I absolutely am, I said. Because I spent a year being lied to in private. So now we're flipping the lights on. She reached out to grab my arm. I stepped back. Don't touch me, I said, louder now. Don't touch me with the same hands you used to text apologies to him while I was sitting 10 feet away. People were starting to turn. Her manager glanced over. You think you're so clever, she snapped, eyes wild. Digging through my life like a parasite. You don't even understand what you were to me, a placeholder. I tilted my head. And yet you lived in the house I paid for, spent money I earned, wore the ring I chose, and still found time to make yourself the victim in your own crime. You weren't there for me, she yelled, voice cracking. You were emotionally constipated. You treated me like a chore. What was I supposed to do, rot in your boring little life? You were supposed to keep your vows, I said, stepping forward now, voice firm, not loud, just unflinching. You were supposed to come to me when you were unhappy. But no, you needed admiration. You needed some glorified LinkedIn profile in a suit to validate the part of you that was too weak to face yourself. He made me feel alive, she shouted, now fully red-faced, eyes glossy. You made me feel like a roommate with a checklist. Then you should have left, I said. You should have walked out like an adult instead of crawling into someone else's bed like a coward. The air snapped. Her coworker gasped. Someone started filming on their phone. Angela turned in a full circle, hands raised, voice shrieking. You think you're the victim here? You manipulated me. You hacked me, stalked me, set me up. I gave you rope, I said. You built the gallows. Her boss stepped closer now, glancing between us. Is this what's happening here? Angela turned, desperate. It's nothing. He's just trying to ruin my career. He's making it all up. I pulled the folder from inside my coat. These are printed logs of her hotel bookings under alias names. Her emails. Messages. All cross-referenced. I've already sent a copy to your HR team, but I thought you might want the professional courtesy of seeing it yourself. Angela lunged forward, knocking the folder from my hand, papers scattering across the patio. A few guests gasped. One woman bent to pick up a page, her eyes scanning rapidly, then slowly rising to look at Angela with something like pity. You bastard, Angela whispered, shaking. You waited until I had something good and then tore it down. You wanted to see me crawl. I leaned in, just close enough for only she could hear. No, Angela. I wanted to see if you'd stop. You didn't. She slapped me hard across the face, the sound slicing through the murmurs. No one intervened. Not yet. And I didn't flinch. I just stared at her, dead calm. That's the last thing you'll ever take from me, I said. Your access is gone. Your name's off the title. Your cards are dead. Your reputation is yours now, every inch of it. She was sobbing now, but it wasn't grief. It was collapse. Her boss stepped away. Her friends peeled off. Even the affair partner backed toward the elevator, face pale, whispering something about needing to get some air. She looked around, searching for a life raft. There was none. Just me, standing above the wreckage, not angry, just finished. I adjusted my cufflinks, stepped over the scattered papers, and walked toward the elevator as the crowd watched her fall apart. And I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. Everyone had heard the truth, and she had nowhere left to hide. In the weeks that followed, Angela's carefully constructed world didn't crumble all at once. It eroded slowly, like a shoreline losing ground tide by tide, until there was nothing left but exposed roots and debris. Her employer terminated her officially within 10 business days, citing conduct detrimental to corporate integrity. They used those words because they had to, but everyone knew what it really meant. No one wanted to work with a liar who dragged her personal disaster into professional space. Her once vibrant LinkedIn went dark. The wellness blog she co-founded stopped updating. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she tried to reach out to a few former colleagues for help. None responded. One of them even blocked her publicly, which for their kind is the equivalent of an execution. Socially, she became untouchable. The woman who used to host wine nights and strategy brunches now lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a closed tanning salon 2 cities away, working part-time at a regional spa. No title, no desk, no reverence. The affair partner vanished 2 days after the rooftop meltdown, and from what I gathered, he blocked her on everything before she even had a chance to beg. I suppose he only liked her when she was someone else's secret. Her family distanced themselves in silence, the way families do when they realize their last name has become a liability. Her mother stopped answering calls. Her father returned her letters unopened. Even her younger sister, who once idolized her, posted a vague quote about betrayal being a choice, not an accident, the day after the truth went public. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I simply lived. I ate dinner without tension. I went on walks without checking the time. I slept through the night. Then, one quiet evening, weeks after the storm, she showed up at my door. I saw her through the peephole before she even knocked, disheveled, eyes ringed with shadows, holding a manila envelope like it might resurrect something. When I opened the door, she didn't speak right away. She just stood there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her, a shadow of a person whose pride had finally run dry. I don't know who I am anymore, she said softly. Everything's gone. I thought, if I explained, I didn't answer. I watched her try to piece together sentences like broken glass, each word cutting her a little more. I still love you, she whispered. I swear I do. What we had. I miss it. I was stupid. I was selfish. but I never stopped loving you. I looked at her like you might look at a painting of someone you once knew. Familiar, but distant. Strange, I said. I don't even remember your name anymore. She flinched, as if I'd physically hit her, and for a moment, she looked like she might collapse right there on the doorstep. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I simply closed it with quiet finality, a full stop to a sentence that had gone on too long. She didn't knock again, and I never saw her after that. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening. I've told my story not to seek sympathy, but to show you what happens when a man chooses patience over panic. Let me know where you're listening from, and more importantly, did you enjoy the ending? Because in my case, it was the best one I never asked for.